Let's just think about your day for a second. You wake up, and what's your alarm? Probably an Android phone, right? You need to go somewhere. You pop open Google Maps, got a random question, you Google it. An email, Gmail. Need to watch a video, YouTube. I mean, let's be honest, we are all living in Google's world. It's not just some company, it's become this invisible utility that just runs our modern lives.
And today, its parent company, Alphabet, is worth a truly mind-bending $3 trillion. Now, to put that number into perspective for you, that is more than the entire economy of the United Kingdom. Just let that sink in.
And that incredible scale, it translates directly to dominance. Google search handles over 90% of all searches on the entire planet. That isn't just a market share, That is basically a monopoly on human curiosity itself.
That dominance, well, it kind of locks us all in. Billions upon billions of people are plugged into this ecosystem every single day. It's become this indispensable tool, for sure, but it's also a really controversial one, constantly facing heat over its immense power and, of course, what it does with all our data.
So the big question is, how did we get here? How on earth did two PhD dropouts manage to build an empire that basically runs the internet? Well, it turns out it all started with a campus tour, a really bad name, and a check they couldn't even cash.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock. The year is 1995. We're at Stanford University. A grad student named Larry Page is touring the campus, and his guide is this math whiz named Sergey Brin. Now, the legend goes that they argued about pretty much everything on that tour. But that friction, it sparked a world-changing idea.
You have to remember, back then, search engines were just awful. They basically just counted how many times a keyword appeared on a page. But Larry and Sergey's project, which they first called Backrub, was totally different. Their algorithm, PageRank, treated a link from another website like a vote of confidence. So the really genius part was, it didn't just count the links, it valued links from other important pages more highly. It was like a citation system for the whole web, and man, it worked brilliantly.
But Backrub, what a terrible name, right? They needed something that really captured the massive scale of their mission, which was to organize all the world's information. They landed on Google. That's the number one, followed by 100 zeros. But then, in what has to be the most profitable typo in history, a fellow student who was helping them look for a domain name spelled it Google. They actually liked it. And by 1998, they had their first major investment, a check for $100,000.
But there was a huge problem. The check was made out to Google Inc., a company that didn't legally exist yet. They didn't have a bank account, nothing. So for 2 whole weeks, that life-changing check just sat in a desk drawer while they scrambled to incorporate the company. And you want to know how they celebrated landing their first big investor? Breakfast at Burger King. Humble beginnings for sure. So with that check finally cashed, in September 1998, Google Inc. officially opened for business. Or maybe I should say it opened its garage door. They were in Menlo Park, California, renting space from a future CEO of YouTube, a woman named Susan Wojcicki.
Their early culture was about as far from corporate as you can get. This wasn't some sleek headquarters. It was a hacker's den. Their very first server rack was famously built out of Lego bricks, not because it was cute, but because it was cheap and they could easily expand it. Even the first ever Google Doodle was basically just a quirky out-of-office message to let people know they were off at the Burning Man festival. This whole era was really defined by their unofficial motto, "Don't be evil." By the year 2000, Google was, without a doubt, the best search engine on the web. But they had one major problem. They weren't making any real money. That all changed with the launch of Google AdWords. It was this revolutionary self-service platform where any business, big or small, could bid on keywords. It was literally a money printer. As the company just exploded, investors insisted on some adult supervision. So they brought in a seasoned executive, Eric Schmidt, as CEO, to turn their amazing project into a real global business.
And wow, what a business it became. I mean, just look at this growth. It's absolutely explosive. In 2001, their revenue was about $85 million. Just 2 years later, fueled entirely by AdWords, it had skyrocketed to nearly $1.5 billion. This was what set the stage for one of the most anticipated IPOs in history. On August 19, 2004, Google went public with a valuation of $23 billion. The stock offering instantly created an estimated 900 millionaires among its early employees. Yeah, Google wasn't a scrappy startup anymore. It was a Wall Street titan.
So what do you do when you're suddenly flush with billions in cash? Well, if you're Google, you go on what might be the most legendary shopping spree in tech history. And two of these deals, in particular, would go down as the greatest heists of all time.
Okay, so heist number one. In 2005, they bought this tiny, failing startup called Android for just $50 million. Today, Android runs on over 73% of all smartphones on Earth. Then there's heist number two. In 2006, they paid what seemed like an insane $1.65 billion for YouTube, which at the time was this chaotic video site that everyone thought was a legal time bomb. Today, it's the second most visited website in the world.
So what was their secret sauce for all this innovation? Well, a big part of it was this legendary policy they called 20% time. The idea was that engineers were encouraged to spend 1 day a week, 20% of their time, working on their own side projects. This wasn't just a cool perk, it was a formal innovation engine that produced massive hits like Google News and AdSense. And this is really how they built their ecosystem, their walled garden. They launched Gmail, offering like 500 times more storage than any competitor. They launched Maps, which completely changed how we navigate the world forever. And then they launched their own browser, Chrome. And sometimes inspiration came from the weirdest places. Back in 2000, Jennifer Lopez wore this green dress to the Grammys, and it became the most popular search query they'd ever seen. But people couldn't just find the picture easily, so they built Google Images. Okay, let's fast forward to 2015. By this point, Google was a beast. It was this massive search company that was also building self-driving cars and trying to cure death. Wall Street was getting really confused by all these expensive, far-out moonshot projects. So Larry Page announced a pretty radical solution.
They created a whole new parent company, Alphabet Inc. Now, this was a crucial move. The structure neatly separated the core, massively profitable Google business, search, ads, YouTube, from all the other crazy futuristic bets like the self-driving car company Waymo and the life sciences division Verily. This gave investors clarity, and just as importantly, it freed up the founders to focus on inventing the future. And that brings us right up to today. The journey from a dorm room to a global utility is, without a doubt, one of the greatest business stories ever told. But the scrappy underdog from the garage is now the empire, and that empire is facing its biggest challenges yet.
You see, it's fighting a war on two fronts now. On one front, you've got the war with governments. Massive antitrust lawsuits across the globe are arguing that Google illegally maintained its monopoly. And on the other front, there's a new war for the future of information itself. The rise of generative AI from rivals like OpenAI and Microsoft represents the first real threat to Google's dominance in search in over 2 decades.
So what's the real secret of Google? Well, it's a story of lucky accidents, right? A misspelled name, an uncashable check. It's a story of absolutely brilliant gambles, like buying a failing phone OS for pocket change. And at its heart, it's a story of relentless, world-changing ambition. So the next time you type into that simple white box, you'll know the decades of drama behind it. And you'll know that for them, the search for what's next, it never, ever stops.